Hi everyone, today I wanted to document my experience using Blender. The pacing of this video is going to be a little bit off because I basically just compiled all of my projects into one long string, and I didn't write a script for this so that we can freeformly talk about all of these projects. This was a 7-month or so use of Blender. And with everything, I started off with the basic project. So I made my donut. I added some physics to the donut where they're dropping. And then I followed a lot of Ian Holbert's tutorials like the Nightmare Men. And I learned a lot from him. The moth tutorial from him. His videos are really great because they're only like a minute long. And then I decided to start playing around with like the hair physics and also the rigid and soft body physics. So every year I get 1 week off from work during Christmas, and this was my Christmas project. I decided to really focus on Blender and use my time to make something interesting, and I got better at doing the hair physics. Like I got this nice brushy hair ball going down. And ultimately, the end of that week culminated in this marble race video where I'm using like 4 different types of marble physics. I'm using 2 hard body marbles, a soft body marble, and the hairball marble. And, I'm only a weekend, so every shot here is hand keyed and kind of janky the way that it came out, but and very simple geometry. I was running into a lot of problems where like physics wasn't interacting correctly, where they would get hung up on something or they would get sucked into another object. But for a project that only took me maybe 3 or 4 days to put together and my first time doing it, I'm pretty okay with its jankiness. There's some really good shots in here that are very pretty to look at. Now, I attribute a lot of this to the HDRI. I just pulled an HDRI from somewhere. I didn't know how to do lighting other than the very basics at the start here. And as you can see, like even this shot is pretty nice looking. I should go back and just make that. It would be pretty satisfying. And like I said, the cameras are really janky. Like I hand keyed it, and sometimes it like jumps instead of being like the next frame. I chose a frame like 2 later, so it takes like 2 frames to get to the next area that I want to show, and it doesn't work right. But we were already way too into the render, and I think this took about 3 days for my computer to render at this point. But even like this, where we have like this see-through soft body and the lighting going through it, it looks pretty nice for what it is. And I used a lot of metallic in here, like the, I don't know, the colors look nice. And with all its jankiness and kind of like humor to it, like, this radioactive ball going down, a marble that's just called Dave, a money chain chomp, and this crowd that's just going nuts after something that's not really well defined, right? Like if coming into this cold, you're just like, what am I watching here? It's just crazy. But the geometry, all that's used in here is pretty simple. And even though with that I couldn't get it to quite work right, so I wanted to spend some more time making geometry. So I started making like this Wookiee spaceship, and eventually I settled on making the elephant. The elephant is the project that took me maybe 3 weeks or so to do. I was trying to make it like this spaceship that was abandoned for a long period of time and just getting started up, and I wanted this tarp to fly off of it as it was going up, but the tarp I could never really get to work quite right. You can see it's like clipping through, and it took a long time and a lot of edits to get these the grass to work. And I wish I saved this particular one, because this is the one that I think the smoke was really good looking, and I didn't save that file, so wasn't able to like recreate it again. But eventually I made this project where we're kind of like in this mountainous region, and you see the smoke of the engines building up, and the idea is that this ship is so toxic to the environment that it actually changes the foliage and leaves these like little dancing particles in the air. And but it was like cheap to operate and like well armored for what it is, with these big armor plates making up like the elephant ears and the sides, and very poor safety record, but something that like a smuggler would use. But so this has a lot more geometry in it. I was learning how to make these objects. Obviously the texture isn't that great. And then I wanted to move on to making something a little bit closer to my heart. So I used to work at a pinball bar repairing pinball machines. And I took all these photos. This was like, we had this event space that you could rent out for parties and everything else. And then every Tuesday night we would run these leagues. So this is a time lapse of the league, and it's IFPA. And there's a clip coming up that's really funny. We have this 45 machine, and let's see if I can get this in here. 45 record player that I swapped out the disc on to a Rickroll, and I'll explain it after it, but here it goes. So every time that the owner was on a winning streak, he would play Never Gonna Break My Stride on the pinball machine. So I swapped that out with the Rickroll 45, and it took about 2 months for him to eventually play it, but it was a good payoff when it did. So I started off making all the pinball machines. Now I only made one pinball machine model, and I used, again, tricks from Ian Holbert on how to make like the DMD displays in the back running. And that plays out for most of the machines. I mean, this isn't perfect. This isn't really like how a pinball machine is put together, but if you know anything about like the party zone there, the back glass is actually on the lower half and the speaker's on top, so it doesn't really work for that one, but at a close glance you can't really notice. And I'm actually surprised at how well this came out, because the geometry is pretty simple, and all I did was use different skins for the different games, which there's plenty of pinball machine photos out, and just gave them a mission to make the glass and everything else just kind of pop. So I added Frank the fish. He didn't make it into the final project, but I was gonna make it like a little bit more like dreamlike and surreal. So I was playing around with this fish, and this is the first time that I'm really moving the camera on a curve. And he's leaving these particles behind. He's just swimming through, and the bar isn't finished yet. There's some double geometry which made like textures pop in and out, so I had to go back and fix that. It was very frustrating. The outside of the building's coming together, and there's plenty of photos of the bar online. So I had the TV, I made all of these beer cans, I was able to add the beer board and some other artwork that was actually there in the real bar. And it took a little bit of time to get the stools right, because I had to add some extra geometry, because I was softening the edges. I wasn't using like I forget what the term is, but you have to add some extra geometry so that you don't get this weird artifacting on them. And the lights here are actually fine. I put a curve inside of a glass sphere, and they look great. So for some reason, it got messed up on later versions, and I'm not really sure what happened. And then, I had to spice it up a little bit. We never had like a 30-foot sign on top of the building, spelling out Flipside, and I got a lot of flack for this sign putting it into the project because the E is on the end. So if you look at it from the side, it just says Flipsid instead. But I made sure that in the final product, we're always looking on it from this angle coming into it, so it always says Flipside. After this, bar needs some bartenders, and it's too janky to make people, so I made some robots, and let's see, he should be coming up soon. I kind of made him as if he was like the driver of that elephant ship, just kind of big, clunky. You don't really want to mess with this robot if you don't pay. And he's named Farley too. He was a bartender that used to work there, and I eventually made 2 bartender robots. So basically the bottom half is the same, but the top halves are different. And the other one's called Wyborg, and kind of the bubble robot from Lost in Space. And I don't really know, the Farley kind of has got that like Cherno Alpha vibe from like Pacific Rim or Pacific, not specific, Pacific Rim. And we always watched Bob Ross on the TV, so put a Bob Ross on there. here's where it starts getting like closer to the final project. I added some volumetric clouds in the background, and these car models I just pulled off of blend swap, and trying to make it almost cyberpunky now at this point. And I just repeated the machines on the back because you wouldn't really notice the other side of the room. And it's sad the bar didn't survive COVID, so a place that I used to spend a lot of time at, and especially for someone that doesn't, I don't drink, so I wanted, it was nice to go somewhere that you could do something else other than just, sitting at a bar. And having the IFPA rated tournaments was a lot of fun. If you don't know anything about IFPA, it's a way of playing pinball competitively, even though that's not really competitive kind of sport. But we did a lot of big events there, a lot of big tournaments, which was a lot of fun. So now I added a whole city around it. These buildings, again, I pulled off of somewhere, and the camera's on a curve, and it's kind of janky in these first renditions because as you're farther away you want to be going faster, and then as you're coming closer you want to slow it down. And I was still keyframing where the camera was, and I didn't calculate it right. So here's the final project that ended up being. I stopped adding more and more stuff because I was running into the program crashing a lot, and I was running into CUDA memory problems. I mean, I basically got it to a point that I was presentable. I added some of these car models I made, just flying through, giving a lot of like stuff going on. We're getting close to the guard. We have our Nightmare Men outside and our robots going, and it does one final swoop through with the lighting looking pretty good. And it was a lot of work. Like I said, it took me about 4 months, and my computer took about a week and a half to render this. And I have a 1070 Ti and a 6700K, so not really a slouch computer, but it just takes a lot of time. It was a lot of effort, and I don't know if I would do another project of this scale again, but it was definitely an experience, and I would recommend for you to try it. And if you liked how this video came out and all the work and effort that came into it, I would very much appreciate if you like and subscribe to this channel. It was definitely a labor of love and a good memory of a place that I used to spend a lot of time at. Thanks for watching.